Letty Owings Center is a 29-bed residential substance use disorder treatment facility, and we specialize in working with women who are pregnant or have a child under the age of 6 coming to live with them while they're in treatment. So in the whole state of Oregon, it's estimated that there are about 100 beds that are specifically for pregnant parenting women, and we hold 29 of them. We have a lot of interaction with DHS Child Welfare. Many of the women that come to us have already lost custody of a child. Coming to Letty Owings is one of really the only ways that they can hope to earn custody back of their child.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of partnering with the child welfare workers. We had one woman come in, and she was one of our older moms. She was already in her early 40s. She came in with her daughter, who was, I think, 4. And when she came in, she was very, very ill. She had been using drugs for a long time and had been sort of coerced into the sex industry and was unable to escape the very abusive man that was controlling that. She struggled with psychosis and thought that she had worms coming out of her skin, things like this. She had untreated diabetes with blood sugar in the 500s. She really wanted to recover.
Right.
And we worked with her for longer than what we usually do with somebody, because she came in with so many challenges. It was about 3 months into her treatment with us, and I remember the day she found me, and she said, "Tina, today I realized there aren't bugs."
Oh.
I mean, the human brain is incredibly resilient, but drugs and alcohol really do a number on it, particularly with the advent of fentanyl and also the methamphetamine that's on the streets now. We are seeing folks that cognitively are just much more disabled by their use. Sometimes they really can't process verbally at all. And so we start with the most basic of basics. It's a process, not an event. I mean, getting into recovery is not like flicking a light switch from off to on.
Right.
It's a very difficult journey. We really see women sort of transform. We see them get healthier physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Knowing of so many clients that I've worked with over the years, over my 30 years in the field, we don't so often hear about the people that went to treatment, got into recovery, and then just went on to live lives.
Yeah.
Because they are us.
Yeah.
They are living as our neighbors.
Yeah.
As our, as the mom of my daughter's preschool friend. They're all around us. People in recovery are all around us. I can't tell you how many women have said as they're leaving, "You saved my life,"